Hello and welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about all the books that I DNF'd in 2024. And yes, I have waited till January to start doing all of my wrap-up videos because I still read books in December. So it doesn't really make sense for me to make wrap-up videos of like my top favorites and my least favorites, the ones I DNF'd in December, because I'm still reading and I could still potentially add a book to the list. So I just kind of wait till January-ish. Like, this video is going up on like probably in January. I don't know exactly which date because I have like a couple videos I'm gonna be filming, but like, yeah, I wait to do all my wrap-up stuff for January because December is part of the year. A lot of people seem to forget that. First one, I have my little notebook here with all of my notes so that I don't forget anything. So the first one is Deriving Life by Elizabeth Bear. I already have a awkward relationship with Elizabeth Bear's writing. I read an entire trilogy by her back in like 2019 because I was told I needed to read this trilogy before I read this other series by her. You didn't have to. But I struggled reading her series and I like pushed myself through it. It was before I got into the idea of like DNFing books. But with this one, I had a lot of trouble just like understanding what message she was trying to get across. And when I went and looked at other reviews, people were like, oh, it's an allegory for like cancer. And I was like, didn't pick up on that at all. Wasn't picking up on that at all. I was confused through most of this short story. And I ended up just stopping reading it because I wasn't getting the message. It wasn't making sense to me. And even after seeing everyone else say that it was supposed to be like the topic was supposed to be cancer, I was like, I still don't see it. So that was why I ended up DNFing that one. Next one, Articulated Restraint by Mary Robinette Kowal. So this one, I couldn't tell if this story was taking place in space or in water. I was just really, really confused about the setting. And then there was, what makes me believe it's possibly space is this is apparently a part of another series that involves space. Never read the series. I've actually never heard of the author until I read this short story. There was a rocket crash that happened and like the main girl is like picked to like go and save this crash site or save the people at the crash site. And it sounded interesting and I was like, okay, cool, like we're gonna go save some people at a crash site. But then like she injures her ankle at some point and like the whole story just started like focusing around that and like just her troubles and I was just like, I don't care about this. And then not really understanding the setting and the flow and like the world building of this tiny short story, I was just like, I'm not enjoying this at all. So I ended up dropping it. Maybe people who have read the greater series understood it a lot better than I did, but yeah, that one was just, that was not working. Like I really was like, I don't care about this woman's injured ankle at all. Next we have Old Media by Annalee Newitz. This is again apparently part of a greater series, but it honestly felt like a chore to read. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever had that feeling where you feel like it's just like, you know how the feeling you get from doing your chores where you're just like, oh, I have to do this. This is what I have to do. Like, I have to clean my kitchen. I have to clean my living room. Like, that's how this short story felt. Like, oh, I just have to read this, even though I don't have to. And so it was just like really boring and kind of like mundane and everything. I will say the thing that threw me off most about it though was the really long descriptions to Ouran High School Host Club. As someone who grew up watching Ouran High School Host Club, it was weird. I was like, thanks for this long drawn out explanation of what the anime Ouran High School Host Club is about. Thanks, I guess. Really weird nostalgia going on there. Next one we have is 2043, A Merman I Should Turn to Be by Nissi Shawl. This was just confusing. There was this short story collection on Amazon where it was like Afrofuturism or in that realm. So it was all these like sci-fi stories that were written by Black authors. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. Like they're all short stories. Let me give them a try. This one was so confusing. It was like, these people get prosthetics to become mermaids and then they get sent into the water, but then they get attacked And I was just like, I don't understand what's going on. And then I was like, is it just like, am I not understanding it because of the writing? Like, I'm not used to reading Afrofuturism. It's something that I've been like looking into more to like, you know, diversify my reading more. And so I was like, am I just not understanding like the approach of how this style is written? So when I went and looked at like other reviews, I don't think it was me. I don't think it was me, because a lot of the other reviews were by Black readers, and they were like, this was confusing. What were we doing here? I don't understand. And I was like, so am I not the problem? I was just like, okay, so it's not me like understanding this style of writing. It's actually just probably a problem with the story, where like the story wasn't really making sense, and it felt that way to a lot of other people. It has like a 2.95 rating on Goodreads. So yeah, it was just really, really confusing and kind of all over the place. And I was just like, what is happening? And I ended up just DNFing it, because I was just like, I can't follow and figure out what's going on. I do still plan on trying more of like the Afrofuturism style and seeing if there's other things out there that I can like, but like, I'm not going to use this as like I'm never going to touch it again kind of thing, because I did read the entire collection, and I think there was like 2 in the collection that I did fully enjoy, and then like 3 that I didn't really enjoy, and then the 1 that I DNF'd. So yeah, it's still something I'm going to look into. That's just not one I would, that was just not a good one. As Old as This Land by Zachary Rosenberg. This was a like Western horror short story, like not a short story, but like it was like 111 pages, and the writing was really choppy. Like it would have this flow, and then it would just get really choppy, and then it would have this flow, and it made for like a really frustrating read. And then the accents were all over the place. Like I could tell he was trying to like get that old Western accent written into the book, but like it was so much more heavier in some characters, which is true. Like that happens in real life. Like you find some people who just have a heavier accent, but like it made it just really kind of frustrating, because like you'd get into the flow of like how he was presenting the accent, and then all of a sudden he would present it in a different way, and you were like, oh gosh, okay. But then the biggest issue I had was how he presented his lesbian characters. Now, I'm all for representation in books, and I was like, hey, cool, lesbians, awesome. Apparently the author felt it was necessary to just constantly be like, they're lesbians. Did you guys know I have lesbians in my story? And I was just like, bro, I get it. I got it the first time you told me. The first time that you told me that these 2 women were lovers, I was like, sweet, lesbians, representation, let's go. And then you just kept doing it. And it started to become more like look at me, guys. Look at how diverse my book is. Look at it. Look what's here. Like, that's how it came off to me. And not just like something that he was trying to make naturally a part of the story. Almost, and I don't want to say this, but it's like the best word I can use, is like a fetish almost. Like, it came off like in that manner, because it was just like they were lovers. Like every single time they were in a scene together, which they were always in a scene together because the story followed them, it was like they were lovers, they were lesbians, they were lovers. And I was like, I get it. And not in like a way that like it makes you think, oh, they're a cute couple. It was like I'm telling you, they're lovers. And I was just like, oh. And it just got to be too much, and I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore, because I just feel like you're being unnecessarily you're just being unnecessary with how you're presenting this, that it just doesn't feel like you wanted it to be naturally a part of your story. Like, yeah, it rubbed me the wrong way, and I just didn't care for it. Next, we have The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. I don't know if this is going to be controversial, but oh my god, was this boring and horribly executed. The idea was interesting, because I have seen this book at Barnes & Noble numerous times, okay? And I really liked the cover, and I was like, man, this sounds pretty interesting. And Chambers is like supposedly like credited for like being the creator of like cosmic horror alongside the other guy, HP. But like Chambers is also like in that realm and everything, and so like this is considered like a really like important like pivotal story book or whatever. And like you follow this idea, The King in Yellow is a book inside of this book that like when people get a hold of it, weird, cosmic, scary horror things start to happen. But like each short story just got like progressively more and more boring. And like the first one, I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting. But then it just felt like it went on and on and on. And then it just like all of a sudden, like everything happened like explosively in like the last page of the story. And I was like, what is this? Like the unevenness of how the story was being told was weird. And then as I was going through reading more of the stories, I was just like, oh my God, these stories are boring, bro. And one of them didn't even mention, like it mentioned the King in Yellow at like the beginning, but then nothing else throughout the entire story. And I was just like, what does this even have to do? Like, I just feel like the idea was there and like the execution just did not work for me. Next we have Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis. So I am not a fan of cozy. Like when a book is marketed as cozy, I pretty much I don't have an interest in that. Like they're too low stakes for me. There's just not enough going on to keep me engrossed in the story. It's just too kind of mundane for me. But this was a sci-fi cozy, and it was my first, like, this was an arc that I had earlier in the year. And I was like, well, maybe we can make that work. Like, we'll try it. It did not work. It did not work. Because instead of it being, like, one big, like, cohesive story, from what I had read of it, it was, like, small stories of, like, different characters who work at this hotel. But they were all like just angry and miserable people. And then it also felt like the author was like trying to like romanticize like working poor jobs. I don't know. It was weird the way it came off to me. The writing was really clunky. I couldn't get into the flow of it. So I was like constantly tripping over like some of the sentences and everything. And so overall it just was like a hot mess for me. And I was just like, I don't care about anything that's going on. I don't care about these characters and their issues. Because, like, you kind of just, like, start the story out, like, with their issues being thrown at you. And I'm just like, I don't even know you, bro. Why are you trauma dumping on me? Like, that's how I feel with stories like that sometimes. So that's why that ended up not working. I mean, if you like cozy, I say give it a shot. Maybe it'll work out for you. But, yeah, definitely cozy is not for me. But I like to give things a try, especially if it's, like, in a different, like, setting, just to see, because you never know, because, like, yeah, I read, like, a cozy mystery, which, like, I read each book so far, and I was like, oh, these are kind of fine, you know, so, yeah. Next we have The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. This is, like, my third or fourth book by her, and I just do not like her writing. Me and her writing do not get along. I have a really big issue with, like, it feels like she's trying to show off how smart she is, if that makes sense. Like, she puts words, her writing reminds me of Stephen King, where Stephen King's like, look how smart I am, look at this big word I know. She does something very similar, where she just like throws in like these words that like you would have never have come across of unless you had a thesaurus sitting like in front of you. And I have to always like stop and like look words up, because the context clues surrounding it never really seem to explain what she's trying to tell me with this word. And so it ends up pulling me out of the immersion of the story, and I just could not get on with it. And I know a lot of other people like this one, but also, like I said, this is like the third or fourth book where I have just like struggled with, like, I'm at this point, I'm not going to be trying Cassandra Khaw anymore. Like, she's just not the author for me. That one horror one that she did with the Japanese setting and the yokai and stuff, oh, I hated that book. I hated it. And so I was like, let me give this one a try. We'll see. Maybe I'll like it. Like with the mermaid thing and like whatever. But it just did not work out because I just could not follow along with it, because her writing style is just not, it's not for me. Next we have Winter's Orbit by Everine Maxwell. So this was more like a to the Barnes & Noble employee who said this was like it's a space opera with like political stuff. Like, oh my God, you'll love it. You're a liar. You're a liar. And I'm really upset with you about that, because this was a romance. And I have nothing against romances in general. I'm just extremely picky about them. But because I went into this thinking this was going to be like a space opera, like a sci-fi kind of story, I was really frustrated that it was just focusing so much on this like romance love story between the two main dudes, and like it has nothing to do against like male romances, because I've read a couple of those, you know. It's not that, it's just the fact that I went into it with different expectations because of how this bookseller sold it to me. So if you notice, I'm a little mad about that. I think if I had gone in with the different expectations of knowing that this was going to be more romance heavy, my experience would have been different, but it wasn't. But I also found the romance to be very boring, and I found the characters to not really be all that likable in general. So even after I learned that it was actually just more romance related and all the politics involved the romance, I was just kind of like, okay, like, let me try and change my expectations. But like, it had already been kind of ruined. But then the fact that I didn't like the characters, and I just found the story to be kind of like boring and mundane and just kind of like, ugh, it just ended up not working out for me. So I ended up DNFing it. Next, we have The Library of Lost and Found by Jordan Lees. This was another arc that I had. This is a middle grade book, and it's the first in a series. And the first chapter, fantastic. The like prequel chapter, I don't remember if it was a prequel or if it was not prequel. That's not the word I'm looking for. You know that not chapter 1, but I can't think of what it is right now. I haven't slept in 4 days, so whatever that chapter is called, that's not a chapter 1. Okay, that I don't remember if that's what it was or if it was a chapter 1, but either way, the very first piece that you read, super amazing, super engaging, super like interesting, and I was just like, oh my god, what is this mystery? Where'd this kid go? What captured him? What took him? Blah blah blah. And then the story just falls off. It just fell off. I made it like 57%. It took me 2 weeks to even try and get to that percentage. And I just like what happened in the beginning of that very first piece that we read, like nothing else touched it throughout the, like, it's referenced because it's like, oh, this character is missing, but like the author never really takes you back and like shows you anything from that kid's point of view. And instead we follow this little bookworm kid and the main kid, the kid who was taken, his sister or whatever, and she was kind of insufferable. Like, she had this attitude to where she would get angry at people she knew and people she didn't know. And I was like, you're being a bit much right now. And then the main kid, he just didn't stand out on the page. Like when you read him, you're like, oh, he's this cute little like bookworm. He's got like some family issues or whatever, but like he's kind of boring. Like he doesn't pop off the page. And then there was the issue of the chapters were just so unnecessarily long. Remind you, this is a middle grade book, okay? And to take long chapters and put on top of that really lyrical, overwritten, descriptive sentences to really build up this whimsical, magical world, I would stray from the page. You know, I would read a page and I'd be like, oh my god, is this chapter over yet? And I'm an adult, okay? And I always, whenever I read my middle grade books, I think about my middle grade self, and I think about how I would have just returned the book to the library. I would have just been like, I don't want to read this anymore, I'm bored. Because it just dragged, and it just felt like the author was just trying too hard to make his world seem so magical by just being overly lyrical and overly descriptive. And I don't have a problem with a descriptive world or a lyrical world. Like, Patricia McKillip is my girl, okay? She is known for descriptive lyrical writing, and I jam with it. But she knows how to do it right. This guy, unfortunately, he's just a little too much. Just a little bit too much. After that, we have Night's Edge by Liz Karen. I think I made it like 18%, and I was like, I don't care. Yeah, I didn't care. One, I'm not a vampire fan, so it's essentially a vampire book, but oh my gosh, were they boring. They were boring. But also, you just immediately walk into this book and you're just getting trauma dumped on. Like, this girl is just like, my life is so hard, it's so bad, my mom is so bad, oh, I just don't get along with her, my life sucks, I have to do this, and I'm just like, bro, I just met you. And it just made for like because it was just so heavy with like the depressive opening, I was just like, bro, I don't care. Like I've learned really quickly to just walk away from things when I'm just that early on, to where I just feel exhausted trying to get through it. I just go. And the audiobook, whoever was reading that, they did not help, because they sounded bored reading it to me. Okay? So that also didn't help. The audiobook was not any help, because I was like, homegirl, are you enjoying this? Because I don't think you are. I don't think it's just me. Next, we have The Tale of Raw Head and Bloody Bones by Jack Wolfe. So this was like a gothic fiction book that I picked up and from the library. And I dropped this because of the writing style, because what was going on? Every single noun was capitalized. Every single one. And then if I remember correctly, there weren't quotations to let you know when people were talking. So that was confusing. And I just, getting through the first chapter was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, okay? Reading wise. Okay, I've done other things that are hard, okay? Like I birthed a child. That's hard. Okay? But like reading wise, that first chapter, that was a nightmare. And I was just like, I can't do 600 pages of this. I absolutely cannot. This, whatever this is, and apparently it's supposed to be like an old, ye old English style that was used in classics and stuff like that. And I was just like, no. No. Next, we have The Blackstone Ritual by Swearingen Durham. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. So initially when this book came out in 2020, there was a ton of drama around it with one of the subscription boxes, like Faycrate, Lumicrate, stuff like that. I don't remember exactly which one. I just remember there was a ton of drama. I don't remember what the whole drama was about, but there was little drama. And I had gotten an ARC for this that same year, so it was like 2020. And so trying to like, you know, go back through and clean up my ARCs and everything, this was one of them that I picked because it already, you know, it's been 4 years. And it's not terrible. I think what it is like it suffered from being marketed to the wrong age group. It's marketed as YA, and like your main character is 17, and the problem is he talks like he's 12. And a lot of people in some of the other reviews, they were like, it's so juvenile, like this should have been for children. Like they say it in a really like derogatory way, but and I hate that. But like it did read young for an age group that it was like trying to aim at. And that's not to say, and like the thing is like young adult is like 12 to 18, like 12 to 17, like within that range. So it's technically not wrong, but it did read more like a middle grade book, like how the characters talked, how he interacted with people, and then the writing style itself was very young. And so it just kind of like gives you like the wrong vibe going into it. The other thing I had an issue with was the accents. Again, I think accents are something that a lot of authors struggle with when they're writing their books and they want to give their character an accent. With this one in particular, it was so bad to where I started not reading it in the accent, which then made me have to put more effort into the story to understand what the character was saying. And I shouldn't have to do that. Like, if you're going to portray an accent, you need to be able to like do it correctly to where I don't have to sit here and basically rewrite your entire sentence in my head so I know what you're trying to tell me. So that ended up becoming an annoyance, and that was the main reason why I dropped it, because it became a chore to have to constantly like re-edit how these characters were talking in my head, because how he had written them were just not working. So yeah, that was the main issue with it. It wasn't terrible. I think if all the drama hadn't happened, it could have gotten actual helpful reviews possibly. But I do think the people that did in some of the reviews, who unfortunately were being kind of derogatory about it, it did read younger than what people are used to with reading YA, if that makes sense. We're almost done, guys. I promise you. After that, we have The Secret Benefits of Invisibility by C.W. Allen. So this was another arc that I had. This is a sequel to, I forget the name of the first book. I'll put a picture up of it. But this was a sequel. I really enjoyed the first book. Unfortunately, I DNF'd the sequel. And it's because it honestly felt plotless, and it felt like it was directionless at the same time. Like, it was kind of all over the place. A lot of the world building wasn't making sense. So essentially, the kids go to this other land, and it's supposed to be this world that's set apart from our world. But, like, they had places like Kyoto, Amsterdam, like things like that. They would celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, but they didn't know what the days of the week were. And I was like, what? That's weird. That doesn't make sense. None of the adults were smart. Like, there's this attack where all the families and stuff are living, and like they get attacked, and none of the adults know how to deal with this emergency. And I'm like, what do you mean not one adult knew how to handle this emergency? That doesn't make any sense. Like, what are we doing? And then the world building in some of these locations were so confusing. Like the secret hideout that was created, I was like, is this underground or is this above ground? Because how many floors are there? I'm confused. What's happening here? How do they have hammocks while also being in an attic? What? It was confusing. So it just became really frustrating, and it just felt, it didn't feel cohesive like the first one did, and I really enjoyed the first one. So yeah, I was kind of sad. There's supposed to be a third one. Obviously, I'm not going to be moving on to the third one since I DNF'd the second, but yeah, you know, it happens. Also, it's a middle grade book, if you guys couldn't tell by the cover. Next, we have Fierce by Hattie Jacks. This is a romance book. This is a romance book that made me really, really angry. Made me really, really, really angry. Okay, like I've told you guys before, I struggle with a lot of romance books because I just don't feel like I don't feel like romance exists in the romance books. But this particular one, I DNF'd this one due to the fact that the male love interest essentially threatens to rape the female love interest because they get into an argument, and she's like, I'm not going to be your mate. And he's like, I'll do it to you whatever I want to do to you because you're my mate, whether you like it or not. And a couple other things where it basically references him threatening to rape her. And then he leaves in an angry huff, again, for like the 7th time in the book when that happened. And doesn't reflect on what he said. Doesn't think about what he said. Doesn't, when he goes back to her, doesn't apologize. Doesn't say, hey, so what I said was actually not an okay thing to say. No, doesn't apologize, doesn't bring it up, doesn't reflect on it, doesn't do any of that. And she just, it's okay, I forgive you. What do you mean? What do you mean you forgive him? He didn't even apologize. Like, it set me off. And I just remember sending videos, because me and my friend, we like FaceTime each other, and I just remember sending her so many videos just going off on her about this. And yeah, also he was just like an ass, like throughout the entire book. Like from what I read, like he was just this whole red flag male love interest that is so popular in romance is a big reason why I can't get into romance, because if I want a red flag man, I'll walk out my front door. Okay? I don't want that. I want green flags. Please. Moving on. Also The Cat, Rachel Swirsky. I read this one this month in December, and I just, unlikable characters. And I just, they're just 3 angry old ladies who were sisters who hated each other and just bickered, and then they were all dying one by one, but then haunting the house, and I was just like, and then apparently there was their dead cat who was also there, but he like didn't show up enough to like make me be like, I'm gonna read the story for the cat. So yeah, it was bad. And last one on this is Christmas and Other Horrors. This was an anthology of stories that by the title you would think associated with Christmas, but it also I read 7 of the stories, and out of 7 of those stories, I DNF'd 3 of them. Okay, and they just weren't working. I was just finding the stories really boring, really mundane. Some of them touched on different cultures and like their December traditions, I guess you could call them. And I was just like, okay. But like they would be like inserted as like this takes place during Kwanzaa. And you're like, oh, but it has nothing to do with Kwanzaa? No, it's just during Kwanzaa. And I was like, oh. Like, reading Christmas and other horrors, I'm assuming that like the horror is going to take place like because of the holiday. And like only one of them actually felt that way. The rest of them was just kind of like, it takes place during this holiday and that's it. And it just wasn't working for me. And I was doing the audiobook and I was just like, and and like I said, I DNF'd 3 of them out of 7, like the 7 that I attempted to read, I DNF'd 7 of them. And I was just like, bro, and I only liked 1. And I was just like, this isn't worth my time. So yeah. So that is everything that I DNF'd in the year of 2024. I really hope I don't DNF as many books next year. Like, it's not my goal to DNF so many books, but I'm also not afraid to DNF a book because life is too short. Okay? Life is too short. I have over 900 books. Okay? And only 34% of that collection has been read. So if I'm not digging the book, I'm going to put it down. I am. Sometimes, therefore, I missed 2 books. Dragon's Night and Dragon's Pawn by Carol L. Dennis. Well, Dragon's Night I didn't read. I removed it from my bookcases. But Dragon's Pawn, I DNF'd that book because of misogyny. Because of dumb misogyny. Okay? And, I can handle dumb misogyny coming from men. But dumb misogyny coming from women sets me off in a different way. It really, really does. And this was like, making the bed is a woman's job. Excuse me? What do you mean making the bed is a woman's job? Making the bed is anybody's job. Okay? And then the dude's like weird, lustful, like attraction to the female animals. Weird. I didn't like that either. Okay? And then all the animals being like, they giggled like a woman. What do you mean an animal giggled like a woman? What does that even mean? So yeah, totally forgot about that one. And I think it's because I tried to read that one in November and it's not on my spreadsheet. I forgot to add that one. I've been updating my spreadsheet the past couple days and I forgot about that one. So that's actually the last one. So with that said, these are all the books I DNF'd. Sometimes it happens, DNF that book if you're not enjoying it, DNF if it's making you mad, DNF if it's just not entertaining you, okay? There's so many books out there. DNFing is worth it, okay? It's not a bad thing. And you can count it towards your goal, you cannot count it towards your goal, who cares? It's your goal at the end of the year. I count them because I put in the effort. Okay, I put in the effort and the time. Okay, I wasted valuable time on these books. I'm counting them towards my goal for the end of the year, period. Okay, so with that said, if you guys have any thoughts or anything, drop them down below, comment, like, subscribe, all those great things, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.